DC has more speedsters than you can count, and every single one of them taps into the same cosmic energy source to do it. But here's the thing, the first Flash ever created didn't have access to that power at all, and that one detail changes everything about how this ranking works. So today, we're ranking and explaining every major DC speedster from weakest to strongest, starting with the one who started it all. Flash, Jay Garrick, hit the pages of Flash Comics #1 in 1940, making him the original speedster in DC's entire universe. But here's where it gets interesting. Jay got his powers by inhaling hard water vapors during a lab accident. That's it. No lightning bolt, no cosmic treadmill, no speed force connection whatsoever. And that's because the speed force didn't even exist as a concept until decades after Jay was already running circles around Golden Age villains. That distinction matters more than you think. Every other speedster on this list draws power from the speed force, a literal extra-dimensional energy field that fuels their abilities and defines their ceiling. Jay technically operates outside that framework entirely. He's fast, absolutely, but he's playing a completely different game than everyone who came after him. He rocks the iconic winged Mercury helmet, calls Earth 2 home in DC's multiverse, and carries over 80 years of combat experience. Every speedster who followed him treats Jay with near reverence, calling him the grandfather of the Flash legacy. But respect doesn't equal raw power. His ranking at the bottom isn't a disrespect. It's almost a technicality. The system that measures every other speedster on this list simply wasn't built for him. But if you think the original Flash had a complicated relationship with the Speed Force, wait until you hear about the man who literally created it. Flash, Barry Allen. Barry Allen is the reason every speedster on this list exists. Literally. In 1956, a lightning bolt hit a rack of chemicals in his police lab, and the entire modern age of DC speedsters was born overnight. He carried the Flash mantle for 30 years, became the gold standard for heroic sacrifice when he died saving the multiverse in Crisis on Infinite Earths, and then came back from the dead in 2008 because comics. But here's where it gets complicated. In certain DC continuities, Barry's future self is depicted as the actual creator of the Speed Force, not just a user, the source. That means every speedster who ever lived, including ones who chronologically existed before him, got their powers from something Barry hadn't even generated yet. It's a time paradox that has driven fans and writers insane for years, and different creative teams keep resolving it differently because nobody can agree on how it works. So you'd think the guy who literally invented the engine would be the fastest car on the track, right? He's not. Despite being the Speed Force's potential architect, Barry's demonstrated feats are consistently outpaced by Wally West at peak performance. And not just Wally. Thawne outmaneuvers him tactically, Zolomon breaks the rules of speed entirely, and Savitar achieved godhood through the very force Barry may have created. He's the blueprint that his own students surpassed, and the foundation everyone else built on top of and then left behind. That's why he lands at number 9. Not because he's weak, but because being the origin doesn't make you the destination. And speaking of students surpassing their mentors, the next speedster on this list proved that point harder than anyone in DC history. Flash, Wally West. Wally West didn't inherit the Flash mantle. He earned it over 27 years. He debuted in 1959 as Kid Flash, spent decades learning the Speed Force from the inside out, and when Barry Allen died saving the multiverse in 1986, Wally stepped up and held the title of the Flash for nearly 20 years. 2 full runs as the primary speedster in DC Comics. That's not a placeholder, that's a legacy. But here's where it gets interesting. At his absolute peak, Wally didn't just match Barry Allen's speed, he surpassed it. And not by some razor-thin margin you could argue away in a comment section. Wally was operating at a level so far beyond normal Speed Force usage that he essentially had to leave reality to sustain it. Comics described his connection to the Speed Force as something approaching enlightenment, a level of understanding no other living speedster has replicated. He survived and broke free from time manipulation during this era, which is a feat that speaks for itself. So why is he only number 8? Because the speedsters above him aren't playing the same game. Wally's placement here isn't about anyone consistently outrunning him in a straight race. It's about the fact that the characters ranked higher operate on fundamentally different rules. And the fact that Wally West, at this level of power, still lands at number 8 should tell you something terrifying about what's coming on this list. Now, there's a conversation the fanbase has been having for years, and it's worth acknowledging. Many readers believe DC has deliberately scaled Wally back in recent comics to make room for Barry Allen's return. His current portrayal genuinely undersells what he's canonically capable of at peak, but even a depowered Wally is faster than almost every name on this list. And speaking of speedsters who never got the respect they deserved, his successor might be the most underestimated of them all, Impulse. Bart Allen wasn't born fast. He was manufactured fast, created in the 30th century, artificially aged through clone acceleration technology, Bart came into existence with super speed already hardwired into his cellular biology. Not an accident, not a formula. Speed was literally coded into every cell in his body from the moment he existed. And here's the thing, his raw reflexes are canonically the fastest of any speedster on this list. Faster reactions than Barry, faster reactions than Wally. On pure reflex speed alone, Bart Allen should be sitting at the top of every ranking ever made, but he's not. And the reason is built right into his name. Impulse isn't just a cool superhero title, it's a diagnosis. Bart's problem was never how fast he could move. It was that he couldn't stop moving. Zero control, zero discipline, all throttle, and no steering wheel. The fastest reflexes in DC history meant nothing when the kid couldn't channel them with any consistency. But here's where it gets genuinely tragic. Bart died during Infinite Crisis in 2004. He was roughly 16 years old, a teenager with the fastest reaction time of any speedster who ever lived, killed before he could ever fully master what he had. He was eventually resurrected, and he went on to operate under both the Kid Flash and Flash mantles. But the debate still rages over whether that resurrection changed him. Some fans argued the pre-death Bart was faster than any version that came after. Others believed dying and returning gave him a deeper understanding of the Speed Force itself. Either way, the core issue remains. Bart's Speed Force connection was artificially created, not organically developed like Barry's or Wally's. Therefore, despite having reflexes that technically outclass everyone above him on this list, he lacks the depth of connection needed to compete at their level. It's the most frustrating kind of ranking. The kid with the highest ceiling who never got to reach it. But if Bart's story is about raw potential without mastery, the next speedster on this list proves that where your speed comes from matters just as much as how fast you go. Jesse Quick. Every other speedster on this list got their powers the same basic way. Lightning, chemicals, accidents, some combination of all three. Jesse Chambers showed up in 1992 and said, "Forget all of that. I have math." Her father, Johnny Quick, discovered a mathematical formula that literally unlocked super speed when spoken aloud. Not a connection to the Speed Force, not a freak lab accident, a sequence of numbers. Jesse inherited that formula, refined it, and used it to keep pace with speedsters who were hardwired into the source of all speed itself. Think about how absurd that is. She was running on a completely different engine than everyone else. Every other speedster on this list plugs directly into the Speed Force like it's a power grid. Jesse was essentially hotwiring her own generator from scratch using her dad's cheat code, and it worked. But here's where her story gets genuinely impressive. During Infinite Crisis and the storylines that followed, Jesse didn't just keep using the formula. She transcended it. She tapped directly into Speed Force energy, effectively upgrading her own origin mid-career. No other speedster has done that. Barry didn't choose his connection. Wally grew into his. Jessie looked at the gap between herself and the Speed Force natives and decided to close it on her own terms. That's not a plot convenience. That's a character earning her spot. The debate around Jessie has always been whether the formula origin makes her fundamentally weaker than someone born into the Speed Force. And honestly, before the upgrade, there was a real argument there. But after she made that direct connection, her feats as a Justice Society member started rivaling speedsters who'd been plugged in from day one. She entered the race with a workaround and left with the real thing. But even Jessie's unconventional path to speed looks normal compared to the next entry, a speedster whose connection to the Speed Force might be older than anyone realizes. Max Mercury. Every speedster on this list got their powers from some kind of accident, experiment, or freak event. Max Mercury is different. Nobody knows exactly how he got his speed, and that's not a gap in the writing. It's the whole point. Max Mercury first appeared in 1989 in the Flash number 15, and from the jump, DC kept his backstory deliberately vague. There are hints that his connection to the Speed Force stretches back centuries, not decades, not years, centuries. While every other speedster on this list is a product of the modern era, Max operates like he's been running since before the concept of the Speed Force even had a name. But here's where it gets interesting. His powers might not even work the same way as everyone else's. There's evidence suggesting Max's speed is rooted in something ancient, possibly mystical, operating on fundamentally different rules than pure Speed Force mechanics. Think about that for a second. Every speedster we've talked about so far plugs into the same energy source. Max might be tapping into something older, and that would explain something that doesn't make sense otherwise. Max Mercury served as the mentor to Bart Allen and several other speedsters, teaching them Speed Force control techniques that even experienced runners couldn't figure out on their own. His raw speed isn't what puts him on this list. It's the fact that he understands the Speed Force better than people who are objectively faster than him. You don't become the guy who teaches the legends unless you know something they don't. His exact age and lifespan are canonically unclear. Some fan theories suggest he's connected to the Speed Force on a mythological or spiritual level, almost like a living bridge between ancient speed and modern Speed Force energy. Whether that's true or not, the mystery itself tells you everything you need to know about Max Mercury. He's the one character in DC's Speedster lineup that the writers intentionally left unknowable. But if Max Mercury is the ancient mystery of the Speed Force, the next Speedster on our list is proof that the future of speed is just getting started. Kid Flash. Okay, let's address this one right away because some of you are already typing in the comments. Wallace West is not as fast as the speedsters ranked above him. He's not as experienced, he doesn't have the feats, and depending on which version you're looking at, his power level is kind of all over the place. So why is he ranked here? Because potential matters. Wallace West, not to be confused with his uncle Wally, who we already covered, was introduced in 2011 as Iris West's nephew. His origin mirrors Barry Allen's almost beat for beat, a particle accelerator accident that gave him a direct organic connection to the Speed Force. But here's the thing, he's typically written as 16 to 18 years old across most versions, which means his Speed Force connection is still developing. He hasn't hit his ceiling yet, he hasn't even found the ceiling. And that's exactly the point. Wallace isn't designed to compete with Barry or Wally right now. He's the next generation speedster, built from the ground up with room to grow. His lower output isn't a weakness in the writing, it's a deliberate design choice. The story is leaving space for him to become something bigger, but tracking his actual power is genuinely tricky. His characterization shifts dramatically between the comics, the Young Justice animated series, and the Arrowverse. In some versions, he's pushing impressive speeds. In others, he's barely keeping up. Therefore, any definitive power ranking has to come with an asterisk, because the writers themselves haven't decided what his final form looks like. He ranks above Jesse Quick and Max Mercury, not because his current feats demand it, but because his connection to the Speed Force is direct, naturally developing, and attached to a character with decades of story still ahead of him. The trajectory matters more than the snapshot. Wallace West is the entry on this list you bookmark and come back to in 5 years. But speaking of speedsters whose power is anything but uncertain, the next entry is the most dangerous villain Barry Allen has ever faced. Was possibly the most terrifying speedster who ever lived. Reverse Flash. Every speedster on this list so far has been ranked by how fast they are. Eobard Thawne is the reason that metric stops working. Debuting in 1963 in the Flash number 137, Thawne traveled back from the 25th century with an identical Speed Force connection to Barry Allen. Same raw power, same source, same access, but here's the thing, he also brought 500 years of future knowledge with him, and that changes everything about how this fight actually plays out. On paper, Thawne and Barry are equals. In practice, Thawne wins almost every encounter, and it's not because he's faster, it's because he understands speed better than the people who taught him about it. He knows exactly how the Speed Force works, where its limits are, and more importantly, and how to exploit those limits against other speedsters. He's not outrunning you, he's outthinking you at light speed, but his tactical brilliance isn't even the scariest part. Thawne's kill count and timeline damage exist in a category that nobody else on this list can touch. He murdered Iris West. He manipulated entire timelines like they were rough drafts he could just rewrite. And after the Flashpoint event in 2011, where Barry's attempt to fix the timeline shattered reality itself, Thawne came back with even more power and an even deeper understanding of temporal mechanics. Now here's where the fan debate gets genuinely important for ranking purposes. If Thawne's time travel abilities are Speed Force derived, which several storylines suggest they are, then his effective power level is astronomically higher than a straight speed comparison would ever show. He's not just running fast, he's rewriting causality. So why only number 3? Because the two speedsters above him don't just use the Speed Force. They fundamentally break the rules of how it's supposed to work. Thawne is Barry Allen's ceiling plus centuries of tactical genius, and that's terrifying. But it's still operating within a conventional framework. The next entry through that framework in the garbage. Zoom. Hunter Zolomon. The second most powerful speedster on this list isn't technically a speedster. And no, that's not a technicality. It fundamentally changes everything about how you rank him. Hunter Zolomon debuted in The Flash Volume 2, issue 197 back in 2000, and his origin starts pretty grounded. He was a criminal profiler, someone who studied killers for a living. Then he got shot, lost the use of his legs, and in a desperate attempt to fix himself, triggered a particle accelerator accident that gave him something nobody had ever seen before. But here's the thing, he didn't tap into the Speed Force. He didn't become faster. What Zolomon gained was the ability to manipulate time itself at a molecular level, altering how how other beings perceive and experience the flow of time around him. To anyone watching, it looks identical to impossible speed. He's a blur, he's untouchable, he hits before you can blink. But the mechanism underneath is completely different from every single entry we've covered so far, and that distinction is exactly what makes him terrifying. You can't outrun someone who isn't running. Every conventional Speed Force solution, every trick Barry or Wally ever developed to beat a faster opponent, none of it applies here. Zoom isn't playing the speed game, he made the speed game irrelevant. He was explicitly designed as Wally West's nightmare, a villain whose powers couldn't be solved by simply going faster. Wally had to evolve beyond his established limits just to survive their encounters, because traditional speedster combat doesn't work when your enemy is bending time perception itself. Zolomon even demonstrated the ability to manipulate how the Speed Force itself is perceived, not just individual targets, but the fundamental force that powers everyone else on this list. The fan debate around Zoom is genuinely fascinating. Is time manipulation strictly superior to pure speed, or just counterintuitive enough to be unbeatable in practice? The honest answer is probably both. He's not the fastest being alive. He might not win a straight line race against Wally or Barry, but in direct combat, where perception and reaction time determine who lives and who dies, his power set might be completely unbeatable. But if a speedster who breaks the rules of speed is this dangerous, imagine what happens when someone achieves actual godhood through the Speed Force. Savitar. Every single speedster on this list earned their spot through some combination of accidents, formulas, time travel, or sheer willpower. Savitar didn't earn his spot, he transcended the entire system. Debuting in The Flash Volume 2, issue 108 back in 1997, Savitar isn't described as a speedster who gained powers. He's described as the first being to ever achieve a Speed Force connection, period. Not the first human, and the first being. That means he predates every single entry on this list, and potentially predates the modern Speed Force framework itself. But here's where he separates from everyone else. His origin wasn't a lightning bolt or a chemical bath or a mathematical formula. It was accumulated Speed Force mastery over an indeterminate span of time, slowly crossing a threshold that transformed him from a man who could run fast into something that doesn't belong in the same conversation as mortals. He didn't just connect to the Speed Force, he kept going until the connection became something else entirely. The results speak for themselves. Strength and durability that dwarf normal speedsters, near immunity to conventional damage, the explicit in-universe designation of God of Speed, and that's not a nickname fans gave him, that's a classification. The comics treat it as a statement of fact, but the ability that truly puts him in a different tier is one that no other speedster on this list possesses. Savitar can grant and revoke Speed Force powers from other beings. Think about what that means. Barry Allen draws from the Speed Force, Wally West channels it, Eobard Thawne manipulates it, Savitar administers it. He doesn't operate within the Speed Force framework, he operates above it, deciding who gets access and who loses it. In terms of raw combat power, he's been portrayed as capable of handling Barry Allen and Eobard Thawne simultaneously, two of the most powerful speedsters in DC history, and he treats them like inconveniences. Now, his exact capabilities do shift between comic runs, and his Arrowverse portrayal is a completely different animal. Everything here reflects his comics peak, which is the most consistent and complete version of the character. And at that peak, the legitimate question isn't where Savitar ranks among speedsters, it's whether he can even be meaningfully compared to them. Some fans argue he's less a speedster and more a Speed Force deity who happens to share a category with mortals. Every entry on this list represents a point on the same spectrum of what the Speed Force can do to a person. Savitar is what happens when someone reaches the absolute end of that spectrum. And if he's the ceiling, it makes you wonder just how far the Speed Force can actually take someone willing to keep pushing. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.